So we're going to do a real quick video on a reminder on how to make your single crust pastry dough. We're going to use this one for the galettes. So we have a 1 1/4 cup of just all-purpose flour that's been sifted. We have a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and I'm going to go ahead and add that into my dry ingredients. And we have a 3/4 cup of shortening. Remember to pack it to make sure that you don't have any air. And I have 5 teaspoons of water that we might need a little bit more if needed. So in a medium bowl, we're going to stir together that flour and that salt. I just want to make sure that salt isn't stuck in one portion. And then we're going to go ahead and add the shortening. Now I have a dinner fork with me because a lot of you may not have a pastry blender at home. So I'm going to show it to you both ways just in case. I'm going to just get all that out from the inside. Now this is different than a pie dough because we're not adding butter. We really are going to need the galette to hold its shape. We're not putting it in a pie pan. We're going to free-form these. So we don't want to add too much fat to where it's going to run. And it still will be a very flaky dough because we are adding the shortening. So again, I'm just using a dinner fork, and what I'm doing is I'm pushing the shortening through and into the flour. And what we want it to do is look crumbly. So you really want to push all that shortening into small little lumps. Now this would be a pastry blender. So if you guys have the pastry blender, you can use that. In Culinary 1, I think I even showed you guys you could use a food processor. But I don't want to get out the food processor. I don't want to do that many dishes. So I'm just going to go really quick and using, you guys can see that, the fork, and just pushing it through until I really don't see that shortening anymore. They want to become one. Okay, so then we're going to go ahead and we're going to add, I'm going to add almost all of it. I'm going to reserve just a little bit to be on the safe side. See. Until that dough forms. Go ahead and add it. And we'll see if I even need some more. So I've kind of got it in there. You'll start to feel when the dough starts to take shape, and then you might want to go ahead and get rid of the fork. And let's move on to using our hands. I'm just going to kind of start pushing it together from the sides until I start to get a ball of dough to come together. And I can see this is all really nice and wet, so it's going to eventually come together. Okay, I'm going to pour it out onto my clean table, and if you have a wood surface, wood cutting board, that would work too. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and kind of knead it and push so all this dough comes together. Okay, so if any of this doesn't add, I can always sprinkle just a little bit more water because I want as much dough as possible. Pull this all in. So it says don't overmix, but I want to make sure I have good to go. So you can do the dough in one day. Wrap it really tight into a ball and then put it in either a Ziploc bag or in some plastic wrap. Okay, so I'm going to form a little ball. Kind of like a disc, right? Roll it into a ball, flatten it out. Okay, wrap this really tight and refrigerate it for at least 30 minutes to go ahead and make your galette. Hope you enjoy. So today we're going to be making rhubarb and strawberry galettes, and if we have the time, I'd like to show you guys. I like to do the minis. They're like individual desserts. You can also make one large galette and then it would serve about 8 people. So the first thing I want to show you guys is rhubarb. So this is rhubarb. Produce man told me that actually it's a little difficult to get right now because of the weather, but it is actually shipped in from the Netherlands. Looks a lot like celery, red celery. So there is a myth out there that rhubarb is actually deadly, and it's not. The stalk is not. It is the leaves, if eaten in a large quantity, could hurt you. So we're going to do 1.5 cups of sliced rhubarb in about 1/4 inch pieces. Now this is not something you want to eat raw. It's very tart. So we're going to want to cut this up into little pieces. And to help sweeten it, we're going to do 1/2 cup of strawberries. So you guys will actually have both of these frozen and ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and slice them up and show them to you using fresh. I also have 1/2 cup of granulated sugar. We're going to use that right in the beginning because we're going to do what's called macerate. We're actually going to let the rhubarb and the strawberries sit with the sugar and the cornstarch for about 15 minutes just to kind of help. This cornstarch is going to thicken the juices. The sugar is actually going to bring the juices out, but also help sweeten. So I have my cornstarch ready to go. Let me show you, first of all, how to go ahead and start cutting the rhubarb. So I want to go ahead, first of all, and remove each end, get a nice clean cut. And I'm going to go ahead and cut it down because this one's a little thick. I'm going to cut it in half. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to slice it. So it just be kind of a little bit of a thicker dice. It is very stocky, a little thicker than celery. Let me just do 2 at a time. So that's probably 1 cup. I'm going to probably do the second one just to make sure I have enough. Let's add that. Let's do the second one. Cut those dry ends off. You can see it's really thick. Okay. I'm going to go ahead, wash, dry, slice up those strawberries, add them to the rhubarb, and I'll be right with you. I'm back. So I have my sliced strawberries and my rhubarb all together. I'm going to go ahead and add that 1/2 cup of sugar, and let me give that a little toss. Mix this up. Also add the 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. And I was going to see if my spoon would fit in there. It's not. Okay, I have my teaspoon. It's barely going to fit in there. So 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, 6 teaspoons. So there's 1, 2, 3, almost out, 2 tablespoons, 6 teaspoons. And I'm going to go ahead and mix the cornstarch. Now the reason why we use cornstarch and not flour, do we know why? So when you add flour to a liquid, it stays milky. When you add cornstarch to a liquid, it will go clear. So you can start to see the juice. The sugar is going to start to make some juice, but the cornstarch is going to thicken that juice, and it'll make a nice little jam to fill the galettes. Okay, I'm going to move this off to the side, and like it says, you want them to macerate for about 15 minutes. So while that's happening, let's go ahead and start to roll out our pie dough. So again, I kind of like not using a lot of flour, so I'm going to use the parchment sheets. I think I can roll up a sheet and give you guys each a piece of parchment in your bag. And then you're also going to need a rolling pin. Now, if you don't have a rolling pin at home, you could freeform them. You could even use like a tomato can or something a little heavier. Using something that would be round, even a larger can, something that, you know, I hate to say, but even like a can of hairspray, but you want to make sure that the can is not directly touching the dough. You want to make sure you have another piece of parchment or even plastic wrap over the top. So we're going to do 8 singles. This was a single batch of dough, so this is going to do 4. So if you want to do 8 of the galettes, you're going to have to double that pie crust, okay? I'm going to take them, and I'm going to take each individual piece, and I'm going to start by rolling it back into a nice little ball. It's very flaky. Let's keep these other ones covered so they don't dry out. Okay. And I'm going to put a piece of parchment over the top. Maybe I won't so you guys can see. And I'm just basically very gently going to roll it. Might have to just to make sure it doesn't stick. Going to roll it into a nice little circle. And I like the dough to be really thin because that helps the little galette to be very flaky. So again, always roll from the center out. Right? So nice even pressure. Don't go too hard at the very end so that you don't have just these little tiny thin crusts. We're going to work on the shape just a little bit. Okay. If you need to, if your dough's getting a little too warm, you can stop at this point. Go ahead and put them in the refrigerator and just let them come up to room temperature. So I'm going to continue to roll my other dough out. No longer than 15 minutes because again I need to let that macerate, the rhubarb and strawberry macerate for 15. Okay, we'll be back when everything's ready to go. So we've let our fruit, the rhubarb and the strawberries macerate, and you can start to see they're starting to thicken up. There's a little bit of a sauce in there, but it's not thin and watery. So I'm just going to move these off to the side. And then I have some other ingredients ready because we're going to go ahead and start to assemble. So I have a little bit of milk. This is going to be the wash. So if you don't have milk, you could use like an egg or just water, cream, whatever you happen to have. And I happen to have raw sugar. It's a little thicker, a little darker. You could use just regular granulated sugar. I would not use brown sugar. It's going to be too wet. So we'll need those to do our little finishing. And a pastry brush. Don't have one of these at home, that's okay. You can even just use your fingers to paint on top of the galette. I have preheated the oven to 375. I also have another baking sheet. with a clear piece of parchment ready to go. And I'm pulling my galette dough out of the refrigerator. Now you don't want it too cold, because if it's really cold, it's not going to bend properly. It will crack. So I'm kind of picking it up and feeling it. I don't want it too thick. So if I feel like I need to, I'm even just going to roll it a little bit more now that it's cold, just a little carefully to a nice little pie size. So I'm going to say, guys are going to want to try to roll the circles to maybe about 6 inches or so. Okay? Then I'm going to come in here with my mixture, and I am going to use some of the sauce as well, and I'm going to make a nice little pile. A little bit of, make sure you get some strawberry and rhubarb in each bite, and I'm going to kind of flatten it out to a little bit of a mound. All right, so when you're going to form your galette, you're going to bring your pie dough up so it's touching. You're almost going to go to the middle. So like this little piece of strawberry maybe is going to be what's going to show on the top. And then you're going to come halfway through your dough, and then you're going to bring your other side up and just pinch it. Turn it a little bit, bring this side up and pinch it. So you're just keep creating these folds all the way around until the pie dough starts to go right back to the beginning and holds. Now I actually even bring this side up a little bit. That was the first side. Bring it in, and I'm going to tuck that side over just a little bit around and pinch it. So it's a very little free form. Okay, little piece of pie. Move this off to the side because I want to transfer it to the clean sheet. So we have to, I'm going to slide it off my hand and put it right there. Okay, so you guys can see that. Just pinch it together. Okay, let's do another one. Just to kind of, so got my dough. Go a little bit more. Make sure it's not sticking, because I'll never get it off. Okay, it's going with my mixture. So we'll see how much rhubarb and strawberry comes in. You may get away with doing 1 batch of the pie dough, and instead of making 8, you'll just make 4. I think that's what I have in here. Okay, get some of that sauce. All right, so again, start from one side, bring your dough up, and then turn it, and then bring it up. Every time you're just making these little tiny folds, bringing it up towards the middle. Okay, and at that very end, right where I started, I'm actually going to lift that one up and tuck that last one inside, and then pinch that one around. Okay? See if I can lift it, put it on the tray with the other one. All right, I'm going to do 2 more, and I'll show you how to finish them. So I finished making all 4 of them. There they are. You know, galettes are meant to be very rustic. If you really want to get fancy with them, you could roll out the dough and cut a nice little perfect circle. The recipe says pastry dough for 2 9-inch pie crusts. I think when we originally made this, we used the ready-made pie dough and cut out 2 circles of each. I think, you know, that's where it originally came from, and we re-rolled it. I think you can do a single recipe of the dough and use all your filling and you'll be good. So I'm brushing the dough with the milk, and that's going to also help make sure they're staying sealed, and it doesn't take a lot, not even a tablespoon to be honest. Let it, now at least because it's milk, if it gets onto the tray, it's not going to burn too much, but again, you don't want it sitting in a puddle. So just brush the tops of each of them. I have preheated my oven. We didn't talk about that earlier. So I'm at a very hot oven. I'm at 375. We want these to really steam up, puff up, get a nice little flaky crust, and then just warm and barely cook again that strawberry and that rhubarb. Last one. Then I'm going to go ahead and again, just on these edges, right on the top, hit it with all that sugar. A little bit on the top. Again, try not to get it too much on the cookie sheet. We don't want it to burn. So these are going to bake about 25 minutes. Of course, we're going to check them about halfway through. I'm going to say about 15 minutes. Probably going to need to spin them and judge. Maybe all ovens again are a little different. Decide if they need to go a little bit longer. I'll see you when they're finished. Look at these, nice and golden brown. You can see a little bit of syrup started to burn on the edges. We're going to let these cool. You can either serve them with a little bit of powdered sugar or even top them with some vanilla ice cream. See you guys later.